That's right, it's the Colt M5. Might have a Colt on it, but I think this gun's a bit more of a unicorn. Interesting rifle that we have thanks to an assignment that Miss Tia has for a magazine article, but I got permission to give you guys a peek here on the YouTube channel. Tabletop review and field strip, as well as some guessing, coming up next on GB Gaming. The M5 was teased and mentioned a couple years ago, then kind of vanished, and now it appears it's back, or at least this one is. And there's not a lot about it out there, even from Colt themselves. You go to Colt's consumer website, and this thing doesn't exist at all. Google search it, and you get through Colt Defense the fact that it exists in a couple of different configurations, but not a 16-incher like this one is. As far as specs, those are also unavailable. So this will be an interesting one to dissect. I encourage you guys, as you watch, when you spot something interesting or think you can identify something, let us know in the comments below. Let's share it and get some information out there, and hopefully Colt will someday publish all this stuff so we can know for certain. Ms. T and I shot this at our publisher's event, annual event, this last October, and we're really impressed. Each of us were impressed in different ways. I'll let her talk about her way in her article. For me, I just found it to be delightful to shoot. It was a really surprisingly smooth shooter. You know, both she and I are Army veterans. I did Afghanistan and Iraq. She did a 16-monther in Iraq. And so we're familiar with the M4. We're familiar with Colts. And as I understand the M5, and those of you who are Coltophiles can correct me, this was meant to be an update or replacement for the Army. At least that was it was entered to compete for that. It didn't win, so now we have it on the consumer market. What did Colt want to improve? What makes it a 5 over a 4? Other than barrel length, which as we said is something a little different. I'm going to go over what I can notice here, and as I asked before, you guys see something, mention it in the comment section. So we've got a 16-inch barrel that appears to be government profile, makes sense. Standard A2 flash hider. Did come equipped with these Troy metal flip-up sights as an alternative to an optic. Nice to have a gun, actually a rifle, come with sights. And as you can see by the holes, this rather long handguard has been lightened as much as possible without reducing strength, and is M-locked all the way around. Our gas block, which appears to be carbine length since it's about halfway down the barrel, is the old school long style minus a front sight post, which is kind of interesting that there was no change. But I suppose if something's worked for so long, like the M16 style has, you don't want to change it. And it is pinned. Now, interesting thoughts on the pinning there is some folks have said, depending on how the pinning is done, you can disrupt the integrity of the steel there. I think if that were 100% true, we'd probably see a lot more noise about it coming from military reports, but we haven't. This handguard itself, and you notice this swell here being a bit different, is one of the things that I thought was very interesting. This is a truly free-floated handguard. You see most handguards traditionally attached to the barrel nut, and the barrel nut, of course, is on the barrel and attaching to the receiver. And so when there is force applied on the handguard in one direction or another, or weight, it is, in effect, amplified by the leverage of however far out it is, applying force to the barrel. The way this handguard attaches is the barrel nut is actually seated deeper into the upper receiver, hence those swells. Then we have a locating pin here to keep things center and aligned. And these two screws, as you can see, are not clamping the handguard. They're not squeezing at all. They're only squeezing it against the nut on the other side. They pass through some grooves in the barrel nut, not making contact, but just serve as something to prevent the handguard from slipping forward in a significant amount. So we have anti-rotation up here, anti-slip down here, and this handguard is not interfering with the barrel at all. What does that mean for accuracy? We'll have to wait till we get to the range to see. Another update, as you can see, we have a semi-ambi control. I say semi because this works only as a bolt release, although it can be picked up. It does not work as a bolt lock. Interesting choice there. However, if you had to pick one and your warfighter probably being able to release after reload is more important than being able to lock open quickly. You can see we also have an ambidextrous safety here, though that's nothing huge. I guess for a military rifle, at least from my generation of soldier, it is. And they do have it as the smaller one on this side, so it shouldn't be in the way of the trigger finger when you reach. Kept the classic A2 style pistol grip, which I'm a fan of, at least for A2 style rifles. But we do have a mag pull stock on here. Flip it over on the other side, and you can see we've got ambidextrous magazine release. Thanks to this big lever here. You might also have noticed that there's raised aluminum, and these pins, that is the hammer and trigger pin, are actually larger diameter than standard AR-15. They did this to increase surface area and reduce the impact and wear and tear on the receiver. That is probably something you've never seen on a semi-auto rifle, but on something that's fired automatic and has all that jostling, or maybe even if there's suppressor and extra pressures slamming the bolt. I don't know, it's kind of a reach. Anyways, the reasoning behind this was to prolong the life of the lower receiver by reducing the wear and tear and pressure that these pins put on the lower receiver. That I appreciate, especially in an age when you don't know when you're going to lose your rights. Kind of nice to have a receiver you know is going to last long. However, I've never had issues there with pins wearing. I'm trying to think. The closest I've had to it was actually on this size of pin on an AR-10, and it was just that the pins walked on me during a course and made my trigger come apart inside the gun. Not that big of a deal for the course, but it certainly made me pay attention to pins from there on out. Next, we'll take a look inside this thing, and we'll look at the bolt carrier group. Looking inside our lower receiver, we can see that this is blocked from being able to add the third pin without some extra milling. Also notice that they do have an H buffer installed in this tube. Standard castle nut and end plate. They forwent the idea of putting a QD spot back there, although everyone likes to see a QD spot there as like a spec thing. What I've noticed is generally, most of the time, if you attach a sling here, it's going to get in the way of your wrist while you're weapons handling, transitioning from side to side, or it'll get in the way of your hand when you're trying to shoot as it flops down and bunches in the way there. So, no criticism there. On the upper receiver, before we pull out our bolt carrier, I want to show this little machined flat spot here, which I find kind of interesting. It serves no mechanical function that I can tell. However, does look like a great spot for serializing, and I wonder if during the development of the M5 and the development of this receiver to accept this barrel nut and setup, if Colt feared that there was going to be a need to serialize upper receivers, and so created this spot for it. Our charging handle is a Radian, but co-branded with Colt. And you'll notice that we have a nice dry film lubricant on the inside of the upper receiver here. That stuff is awesome. From my experience, makes it a whole lot easier to clean, also requires less lube to keep things clean, and of course serves as a lubricant in its own right. Taking a look at our carrier. We've got some moderate staking, but nothing too crazy. The finish on this feels a little phosphatey. It's got that kind of roughness to it. And this rifle has been fired, so it's of course going to be dirty. Now the firing pin comes out. Just want to get to the bolt so you guys can see what system they went with as far as the additional rubber bits underneath the extractor spring. Same classic dark gray kind of phosphated finish on the cam pin here that the bolt itself has, and you can see that the carrier has a nice chrome lining inside there. That'll keep things smooth. We do have magnetic particle check MPC stamping on there. Interesting lube. It's kind of a motor oil looking thing, which, I mean, lubricant is lubricant. I don't think it really matters. And this extractor is tight, so it's making me think, oh, look at that, we have a copper colored extractor spring with a single polymer piece inside and no donut. Interesting. Now normally I'd say that tell you what all we're going to do in our range video with this, but as this is a piece we have for a magazine article, not a piece we have for the channel, we may not have time to do it. Not everything that we write about ends up on the channel, and obviously not everything that's on the channel ends up in magazines either. That is a snug fit in there. But since these M5s are kind of an interesting piece of history that didn't happen, but could happen in different ways. You might see the M5 being adopted as a law enforcement alternative to a regular AR as those ARs wear out. And that cam pen is tight. Let's see if I can get it to a different spot to rotate it. Snug. I think very snugly fit. Or it might have some commercial success. I know there's, of the limited media that's out there, one of the things that I saw was criticism for the little receiver. That bit bothers me, but I don't own any machine guns, don't plan on making this a machine gun, so really I don't care. And this rib here on the front is interesting. It looks almost like you first thought would be flashing, like when plastic's put together. Obviously that's not how these receivers come, and it's thick enough and strong enough, has enough of an edge that it seems very deliberate. The only thing I could think of that would do is strengthen the magazine housing. However, this magazine weld does not face a lot of stress in normal use, and if there was an issue with them cracking there, I think we'd have heard about it several million ARs ago. So it's an interesting choice. I did notice that while shooting this, if you use a magwell grip, it adds some texture there, but the magwell grip has fallen out of tacticalness. So I'm not sure what's going on there. Otherwise, I really like the way this upper receiver is done. I think it's pretty cool. I wish that we had complete ambidextrous control, not just bolt release on this side. However, I do know that pretty much every receiver set that has done something different has also been patented, and manufacturers are probably running out of what they can do. Might have also been a cost-saving bit. Another thing is when there is linkage to pass through to be able to lock from both sides, it usually results in a weakened receiver because more aluminum has to be removed to pass that through than does whatever light thing is just pushing on the back of this here. So maybe that was done deliberately to keep the receiver strong, but I haven't seen many broken receivers myself. If you guys have, let me know, and the story behind it. I'd certainly be curious to hear that. Otherwise, I hope you guys appreciated this close-up look at the Colt M5. Thanks for watching.